Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The question that we are going to discuss today vis-a-vis Islamic customs and etiquette is something which is very important and become a grave cause of concern, specifically with regard to our new generation. And that is, does Islam allow friendship between men and women? Does Islam allow friendship between girls and boys? And this question has actually assumed a lot of importance, because today we find that in most Muslim countries, boys and girls are studying in co-education, and similarly in places of employment, we find men and women working together, and there is always a chance that they get to be friends with one another, and of course then things can always blow out of proportion. So in the first sense, it needs to be understood that Islam does not allow friendship between men and women, between girls and boys in the conventional sense of the word. We know that friends are people, two friends are people who are absolutely frank with one another. They share a lot of secrets with one another. They share jokes with one another. In all these counts, they become very frank with one another, and so therefore there is always this chance that some limit might be crossed. We know that Islam is the religion of tazkiyah. It's the religion of purification. It wants pure sentiments to be preserved in the hearts of every person, and anything which endangers it, which jeopardizes it, it does not like that it should go on. So therefore, the advice to men and women, to girls and boys, would be that as long as the interaction between them is meaningful, it is based on some objective, for example, exchanging notes, or maybe studying in certain circumstances, or in the form of colleagues if they have to discuss something which relates to their work. This is something, of course, which cannot be objected to. But becoming frank with one another, cracking jokes with one another, is something which can lead towards untoward circumstances, and therefore it must be avoided. Additionally, boys and girls and men and women must also keep the directives of the Quran relating to gender interaction in before them. And of course, when they have to interact with one another, and the interaction is to be of some meaningful nature, then too these etiquette have to be kept in consideration. And the first of them, which is the two of them relate both to men and women, boys and girls, and one of them is additional to women and girls. The common ones are that they must not gaze at one another. As the Quran says, the Quranic term for this is ghazz basar. They should not ogle one another. They should not stare at one another. Their eyes should have modesty in them. Their gaze and sight should have modesty for one another. It has to be very modest and chaste in its nature. The second thing is that the clothes that they are wearing, they should properly cover themselves. They should properly cover their contours, and especially those parts of the body which can become a means of attraction for the opposite gender. And the third thing, which is additional for women only, is that they must not display their adornments and finery before underrated people, especially those jewelry, for example, or those embellishments which are worn on limbs which are generally kept bare and uncovered, for example, the face, the hands, and the feet. Other than that, there is no other restriction. So they can eat with one another, for example. And another thing which perhaps needs to be explained here is that if they have to go out for for example, some outing, it is worthwhile if some elder is with them. Again, this is something which is a means of preserving the chastity and the concept of haya, which is found in every human being. So therefore, in a nutshell, we can say that Islam discourages friendship between the opposite gender. And it says that it is against the tazkiyah and the purification, which is the objective of Islam. And if there is to be some interaction between men and women, between girls and boys, it must be very meaningful, it must be very limited, it must not become very frank, it must not end up in cracking jokes. Of course, it is also very inadvisable that they meet in secret maybe, or they meet in private, because of course this can take them to certain other untoward situations. And similarly, if they have to go out, it is advisable that they take some elder along with them, so that there is always this chance that even if they are interacting meaningfully, Satan is not given the opportunity to intervene and of course ruin their repute. So in a nutshell, we can say that Islam discourages a friendship between the male and female gender, between boys and girls. Of course, it does not say that they have to live separately totally. They can interact, but this interaction has to be meaningful and within the bounds which are stipulated by Islam. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.